In April 2018, Arizona's teachers engaged in a statewide strike. Tens of thousands of teachers wearing red descended on the state capitol, demanding a 20% raise.
This movement was born out of the experience of looking into our students' eyes and knowing that our state, the people who sit in this building, do not fund their success. That's what started this movement. That's why we're here.
How did we get to this point in Arizona? In 2008, the legislature slashed the education budget in Arizona, cutting it by 25% and cutting capital budget by 90%. One result of these budget cuts is that teacher salaries were either cut or remained stagnant for years, not keeping up with inflation. Over the next decade, the economy in Arizona gradually recovered, and with it, state revenues went back up. But the educational budget was never fully restored. In 2018, after a large budget surplus was projected, the governor promised to increase teacher salaries by 2%. The leaders of the legislature rejected that, saying that 1% was all that could be afforded. This meant that teacher salaries would again not keep up with inflation. The legislature claimed that while they valued education, there simply was no room in the budget for a meaningful salary increase for teachers. At this time, a national movement emerged called Red for Ed, as teachers around the country sought to draw attention to their low salaries and poor working conditions. In Arizona, the Red for Ed movement mobilized teachers and supportive parents around the state, demanding that teacher salaries be increased and the funding cuts from a decade earlier be reversed. When their demands were not met, they organized a statewide teachers' strike, calling for a 20% raise for teachers. The teachers had widespread support. There was a lot of public sympathy for them and an understanding that they had not been treated fairly over the past decade. Given the level of support of the public and the high-profile nature of the strike, the governor reversed his position and began to support giving teachers a 20% raise. The legislature then agreed to allocate funds to enable a 20% raise distributed across 3 years and began to draft legislation to do that. Even though an agreement had been reached and the legislature had given in to most of the teachers' demands, when the day ended without a bill being passed, the teachers felt betrayed, and their leaders decided to continue their strike until a bill was passed and sent to the governor. Another 2 days went by until that happened. The fact that the strike continued even after the teachers had received their demands shows both a lack of trust in the legislature and a lack of knowledge of the legislative process. The lack of trust is easily understandable, as the legislature had made and broken promises to educators in the past. The misunderstanding of the process, however, was avoidable. The teachers seemed to be unaware that it would take a couple of days to move their bill through the process. They spent more political capital than needed and did lose some support because they decided to continue their strike into a new week. Had the teachers better understood the process, they could have achieved their goals while avoiding the extra cost. This video and the next will outline what the legislative process is and how it plays out at the Arizona legislature. The formal legislative process has lots of steps and is rather complicated. This reflects the seriousness of public policy. Before an idea becomes a law, it's important that the idea be fully considered, with opportunities for experts on both sides of an issue to weigh in, with an analysis from staff on the financial and legal consequences of a new law, and multiple readings to ensure that both the public and the lawmakers fully understand the steps that are being considered before a vote is taken and the policy becomes law. Understood this way, the very fact that the process is complicated is a positive reflection of the fact that we live in a democracy where voices are heard and the public has opportunities to provide input before laws are enacted.
So I imagine that from the outside looking in, the complexity and all that's involved in trying to build a majority for whether it's the budget, which is the most complex thing we do, or just some simple issue seems like it's more difficult than it should be. And the truth is, it's because we as a legislature, even though we are one branch of government, we are divided into two chambers. We have 30 personalities in the Senate and 60 in the House, and you have two different parties, all sorts of different constituencies. And so getting agreement is pretty difficult because people have very strong opinions about things, and they are representing a constituency that has very strong opinions about things. And it's not as simple as, you want a cheese pizza and you want a pepperoni pizza, so we'll just get half and half. If it were that simple, that would be excellent. But for the most part, you're dealing with far greater complexities, obviously, than that, but even just a wide variation of views out there. This place, the Arizona House, is where different worldviews, different value systems, different political ideologies all converge. And so it's very messy, and it can be very dramatic.
Told you it wouldn't take long.